Well, hey, looks like you're there. I'm here. Going to do a real quick vid on how to calibrate the Maclan MMax Pro 160 amp ESC. There's a few things I want to go over first with your radio system before you power up your setup and do your calibration. First thing to do is make sure your receiver and transmitter are properly bound and functioning. So a good way to do that is when your receiver's out, take a battery, plug it in, plug in a servo into your channel, your steering channel, or your throttle channel, or one into each, just to ensure with a battery into your receiver, just a 6-volt battery, 7.2 volt 2S LiPo, and power your radio on, power your receiver on just by plugging the battery into it directly. You want to make sure you don't go over 7.2. Most can't take over 7.2. So if you got a bigger battery, make sure you got a protection circuit, limiting the voltage down to 6 or 7.2 volts. At any point, power it up. Make sure you're bound and your connection to your receiver is really good. A lot of times, problems in electric vehicles can result from a bad receiver connection. Maybe a bad antenna, not getting right signal. That can still interfere with 2.4 is nowhere near as bad as it used to with FMs or even AMs for sure. But make sure your radio is bound with your receiver so it's properly working. Once you know that's properly working, go ahead and get everything installed and set up, and then you can go ahead and power up. But it's always good to power up and calibrate your radio to your ESC, especially on a new system or when you've made some major changes or even minor changes, gearing changes. Sometimes you change the servo out. It's always good to rebind because sometimes those memory settings can cause a little quirks here and there. So when you rebind it, you clean everything out, you start from fresh and go from there. So once you're all installed and everything's set back up with the Maclan ESCs, at least with this one, this is new to me, I haven't done it. What you need to do is we need to power the radio on. So we're going to get that turned on. Now, a lot of ESCs, there's a few multiple ways of programming them. You power it on, you hold the power button down like the Traxxas unit. You do a few other things to power down. With the Maclan ESCs, what you do is you hold full brake. And another thing before you do this, when you set your radio and you get it all bound, make sure your radio settings, especially on your throttle setting, but your steering servo and any other channels you may be using, are all at their stock standard out of the box settings. In this case, that means your EPA settings are at 100, your expos are at 0, your trims are at 0, your sub trims are all zeroed out. Now I've already readjusted the sub trim steering, and that ain't gonna bother us for doing the calibration for the throttle, because that's only the throttle that we're dealing with. But make sure all your, especially your throttle channel, your EPAs are both set at 100, all your expos and everything else are zeroed out, all your trims and sub trims are zeroed out. You want that a stock blank setting with full option of getting full throttle and full brake from the radio. That's where your 100% EPA settings go. So you set those all up once, that's all set. Now, to program the Maclan ESC is very simple. Power your radio up. Before you power on your ESC, you hold full brake. And when you got full brake held, you plug it in, and it will go through a series of beeps and lights, just like all calibrations do. But it recognizes full brake. That's why you need to make sure you're at 100% settings on your radio before you do this, because it might not recognize full brake or recognize it properly, and you might not get proper function. Set up full brake, power it on. Let it go solid, let it go full throttle, blue, go solid, it beeps, let it go to neutral. There it is. We are ready. Got no brake reverse. I haven't got it set up for any reverse. Oops, I gotta set my reverse on my ESC because I'm running backwards. Okay, so I gotta change my ESC. So that's something I'm gonna have to do because I'm setting at mid motor. So now I got to get into the program, and I'll do that on another video. Right now I just wanted to get through, and this is how you calibrate. Now I've got to get in and program the ESC, reverse motor, and do a few other settings. Now there's a few ways of doing that, but again, I'll do a second separate video on that, and I'll probably pick that up tomorrow because it is starting to get pretty late, and I got to crash soon sometime. All right, that's how you program it. Very simple. Turn your radio on, make sure your radio and transmitter or in a receiver are connected, bound properly. Everything's on a 0 setting, 100% endpoints on your throttle setting. Hold full brake, power on your ESC, wait for the beep and the lights. It will turn solid. When it's solid, it beeps, and then you go to the full throttle. It flashes, then it turns solid and beeps. You go to neutral. It flashes, it turns solid, and it inactivates. We get set up. There you go. New one video coming in tomorrow about the programming.